I still remember the sound of that lamp, the heavy crash that silenced a room full of laughter. It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, my baby shower, surrounded by family and smiles. But in one horrifying instant, everything shattered because my little girl spoke the truth everyone else was too afraid to say. She revealed the theft that had been hidden in plain sight, and what followed was something no mother should ever have to witness. What happened next, even I still struggle to believe it. Before we dive in, I want to hear from you, my amazing listeners. Tell me in the comments, where in the world are you watching from, and what time is it right now? I love seeing all the places and time zones light up across our little storytelling family. Hello, my name is Elena, and I'm 35 years old. I live in Denver, Colorado, in a cozy little house where the morning sun warms the kitchen tiles and the smell of toast drifts through the hall. And today I am 7 months pregnant, counting days instead of weeks and breathing through the small aches that come with carrying a new life. My 8-year-old daughter, the brightest part of my mornings, sat at the table drawing a welcome baby card with marker hearts that bled through the paper, asking if the baby would like yellow stars or blue ones for the nursery, and I told her the baby would love anything she made because everything she touches feels like love. My husband moved around the living room with the slow, careful steps of a man trying not to worry his wife, humming under his breath as he gathered a few bills, catching my eye with a reassuring smile that said we would handle all of it, hospital costs, diapers, the 1,000 unknowns, together. His mother had been staying with us for a while, saying it was to help, but most of the help looked like folded arms and sharp comments disguised as concern, and I tried to answer with patience because grief had carved a stubborn hollow in her since her husband passed. It was easier to see the shadow behind her words if I remembered what she'd lost. His sister was a different story, younger, restless, the kind of person who treats Friday night like a personality and a budget like a rumor, and for years my husband had covered more than he should have. Phone bills, rent gaps, a starter fund that never seemed to end until last week, when he finally said no. He didn't shout. He just stood in the kitchen with a quiet steadiness I love him for and told her we needed to keep our money for the baby's arrival. She slammed the door hard enough to rattle the frames, perfume lingering like a challenge. I had hoped the tension would settle before my baby shower, which we'd planned for tomorrow in the living room with pastel balloons and fairy lights and a gentle playlist of lullabies, the kind that makes even the sink sound softer, but the air still held that tight, uneasy thread you can't see and can't ignore. I tried to drown it out with small things, washing tiny onesies, arranging pacifiers in a drawer, reminding myself to breathe, because I've learned that peace is a collection of ordinary moments, not one grand occasion. The calendar said early fall, the kind of Denver morning that starts crisp and warms up quickly, and I opened the back door just long enough to feel the air on my face, to watch sunlight glaze the chalk drawings my daughter had left on the patio. I wanted the whole day to be simple, no arguments, no snide remarks, no last-minute drama that steals the sweetness right out of your mouth. I wanted to remember this season of my life as soft and golden, even if it sometimes felt like walking across glass to keep it that way. After breakfast, I took a slow lap through the house, checking on the decorations I hadn't yet hung, touching the unopened gift bags my mother had dropped off, and when I passed our bedroom, I noticed the dresser top gleaming with the little things that always live there, my lotion, a glass tray with hair ties, the wooden box where my husband empties his pockets each night, except his watch wasn't on the tray. And I only noticed its absence because the circle of empty would looked strangely naked. He must have put it somewhere safer, I told myself, and I didn't mention it. There's a quiet list every mother keeps in her head, and today mine was already full. I poured a second cup of tea to soothe the baby's flutter and called my daughter to put on her shoes because we needed string lights for tomorrow, and while I leaned down to tie her laces, I heard a faint door click down the hall, the hush of careful footsteps that didn't want an audience, and I looked up in time to see a familiar silhouette slip past the frame of our bedroom doorway. I stayed very still and listened for the harmless sounds, someone checking their phone, someone looking for a sweater, but what I heard instead was the tiny scrape of a drawer, then another, and a breath caught in a throat. I started toward the hall, but my daughter's hand, small, warm, certain, rested over mine, and her eyes flicked to the bedroom and then back to me with a kind of grown-up worry I have never liked seeing on a child. In that long, thin stretch of silence, my daughter took a step I did not expect. She walked softly to the corner and watched. Not a peep, not a call, only the wide, honest gaze of a child trying to understand a puzzle the adults pretend doesn't exist. When she returned to my side, she pressed her lips together the way she does when she's memorizing something important, and I felt the baby roll as if the house itself had shifted an inch. I didn't ask what she saw. I told myself I would keep the peace one more day for the party, for the pictures, for the lullabies we had planned. But there are moments when quiet becomes a choice you can't afford, and sometimes the smallest witness carries the heaviest truth in the room. That evening, the house felt quieter than usual, like everyone was saving their breath for tomorrow. I tried to relax on the couch, my hands resting on my belly, but the tension in the air was hard to ignore. From down the hall, I could hear the faint sound of heels clicking. She was back. My husband's sister had arrived earlier than expected, her laughter too loud for the hour, her perfume lingering like smoke after a fire. She breezed into the living room, phone in hand, talking about some party she had to attend, her eyes glinting when she mentioned how a few $100s could make it perfect. Aaron looked up from his laptop, patient but tired. "Sabrina, I told you. I can't help you this month," he said, voice calm but final. "We've got hospital bills coming up and the baby's almost here." For a second, her expression softened, like she might understand, but then her smile sharpened. "Wow, I didn't realize your priorities changed so fast," she said, flipping her hair with a slow, deliberate gesture. "You used to be generous." I wanted to say something, to stop the conversation from turning ugly, but Erin's look told me to stay quiet. She stood there for a moment, silent and cold, then muttered something under her breath and stormed toward her room. The sound of her door slamming echoed through the house, and the vibration felt like a warning. Later, while I folded tiny baby clothes, I caught sight of her through the half-open door to the hallway mirror. She was sitting on her bed, purse open in her lap, the shimmer of something metallic catching the lamplight. My heart skipped. She held the watch in her hand, Erin's watch, and turned it over slowly, admiring it like a prize. I watched her lips move in a whisper, calculating. She zipped the purse shut and slid it under a pile of clothes in her closet, glancing toward the doorway as if afraid of shadows. I stepped back before she could notice me, my pulse quickening. At dinner, she acted like nothing had happened. She laughed loudly at her own jokes, complimented the food, and even offered to help clean up. But her eyes never met mine. Emma, sitting quietly beside me, kept looking at her too, her fork frozen halfway to her mouth. I could tell she wanted to speak, but fear kept her still. I reached under the table and squeezed her hand, letting her know she wasn't alone. After everyone went to bed, I lay awake listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the faint buzz of crickets outside. My thoughts tangled together. What I'd seen, what Emma might have seen, what tomorrow's baby shower was supposed to mean for us as a family. It was supposed to be a celebration, a reminder of love and new beginnings. But now, beneath the surface of ribbons and pastel wrapping paper, something darker waited. Sabrina had taken more than a watch. She'd taken trust. And somehow, I knew that before this was over, that secret she carried so carelessly in her purse would drag all of us into the kind of truth no family wants to face. The next morning, the house came alive with the scent of vanilla candles and the rustle of gift bags. Denver's early autumn sunlight poured through the living room windows, soft and golden, brushing against the pastel decorations we'd worked on all week. The table was set with tiny cupcakes, baby blue napkins, and a sparkling glass punch bowl filled with lemonade. A soft playlist hummed in the background, sweet, familiar songs that made the air feel safe, almost innocent. I wore a light floral dress, one that still fit if I didn't breathe too deeply, and tried to focus on the sound of laughter instead of the storm that had been quietly building inside this house. Friends began to arrive, bringing flowers, baby clothes, and smiles. My parents came in next, Caroline with her calm warmth and Franklin with his quiet strength. They hugged me tightly, and for a few beautiful moments, it felt like nothing could go wrong. Even Vanessa seemed lighter that morning, moving around the kitchen, arranging plates like everything was normal. And then she walked in. My sister-in-law. She was late, as always, but made sure everyone noticed when she entered. The door swinging open, her heels clicking against the hardwood, her perfume arriving before her words. She wore a shimmering gold dress far too glamorous for a daytime family gathering, and her smile was as sharp as glass. "Sorry, I couldn't find parking," she said, setting down a small gift bag on the table. "But at least I made it before the fun started." Aaron greeted her politely, though I could feel the stiffness in his posture. He wanted peace, not drama, not today. He handed me a glass of sparkling juice and whispered, "Just smile, okay? It's almost over." I nodded. We began opening gifts, tiny socks, soft blankets, a pair of handmade booties that made everyone laugh with joy. For a while, it was exactly how I'd imagined, warm, light, and filled with family. Then, right as the laughter peaked, Aaron's voice broke through the chatter, casual but curious. "Honey," he said, "have you seen my watch? My Rolex, the one I usually keep on the dresser? It's missing." The laughter died instantly. I froze, glancing at him. "No," I said slowly. "It was with you last night." His brows furrowed. "I looked everywhere this morning." There was a beat of silence, thick, heavy. I felt my heart start to pound. The air in the room changed. Sabrina's smile flickered, just for a second, before she forced it back into place. And then, the voice that no one expected. Emma's. "Daddy," she said softly, her small voice cutting through the silence. "I saw who took it." Everyone turned to her at once. My breath caught. "Sweetheart, what are you talking about?" I whispered. She looked straight at her father, her eyes clear and steady. "I saw her," she said, pointing across the room. "Your sister. She took it from your dresser and put it in her purse." The room fell completely silent. The kind of silence that feels alive. Every face turned toward Sabrina. For a second, she didn't move. Then her eyes went wide, her mouth tightening into a cruel smile. "What did you just say?" she hissed. "You little liar." She stepped forward, her tone rising, her face flushing red. "You're making this up. How dare you accuse me of something like that?" Vanessa gasped, immediately rushing to her daughter's defense. "That's enough, Emma," she snapped. "You don't talk to adults like that. Apologize right now." I rose to my feet, heart pounding. "She doesn't need to apologize," I said sharply. "She's telling the truth." "Truth?" Vanessa scoffed. "You think my daughter would steal? From her own brother?" Aaron's voice cracked the tension. "Enough. We're not going to fight about this here." He turned to his sister, his tone calm but firm. "Sabrina, is there something you need to tell us?" Her hands trembled slightly, but her smile returned, tight and false. "Of course not," she said, her tone trembling with mock offense. "I can't believe you'd even ask me that." But I saw the flicker of fear in her eyes, the same one I'd seen the night before. The room buzzed with whispers now, friends, relatives, everyone unsure what to say. Emma pressed against my side, small and shaking. I knelt to hold her, whispering, "You did the right thing, baby." Sabrina took a step back, her chest heaving, her voice breaking into a shout. "You're all ridiculous. You're turning a child's lie into a spectacle." She grabbed her purse, clutching it tightly to her side, and in that single motion, I understood. She was protecting it. Protecting what was inside. Aaron's expression hardened. "We'll talk about this after the guests leave," he said. But it was too late. The moment had already cracked open. The truth was standing there, fragile and undeniable. As I reached for Emma's hand to lead her toward the couch, I saw Sabrina's expression twist, humiliation curdling into something darker. In a flash of blind rage, she lunged forward. Her hand went to the side table, and before anyone could react, she seized the heavy metal lamp that stood beside the couch. I screamed her name, but she didn't stop. The lamp swung through the air with a terrifying sound and connected with a sickening thud. Emma collapsed. The lamp hit the floor, shattering the bulb, glass scattering across the rug. Time stopped. For a split second, I couldn't breathe. The sound of my own scream felt far away, like it belonged to someone else. Aaron dropped his glass and rushed to Emma's side, his hands trembling as he lifted her, blood staining his shirt. Vanessa froze, eyes wide in horror. The guests erupted into chaos, shouts, gasps, someone crying out to call 911. My parents rushed toward us as I fell to my knees, my hands shaking uncontrollably. Aaron's voice tore through the panic. Call 911. Now. Someone dialed. I could hear the operator's calm voice echoing through the noise. Within minutes, sirens wailed in the distance. The paramedics burst in, rushing to stabilize Emma, while one of them guided me to sit down as my vision blurred with tears. Aaron held our daughter's hand as they carried her out on the stretcher, whispering, "You're okay, sweetheart, I've got you." And through it all, through the flashing red lights, the screams, and the shattering of what used to be a family, Sabrina stood frozen, the lamp still on the floor beside her, her purse clutched to her chest. Her eyes darted toward the hallway, toward a place to hide, to run, to bury what she'd done. But no one moved to protect her, not even her mother. The moment the paramedics carried my daughter out of the living room, the house no longer felt like mine. Everything, the laughter, the music, the pastel balloons, had vanished into a kind of echoing silence that pressed against my chest. Aaron's shirt was still stained with Emma's blood, his hands shaking as he tried to explain to the officer what had happened. I could barely stand, my knees trembling, my pulse roaring in my ears. Sabrina stood across the room, pale and wide-eyed, the metal lamp lying where she dropped it. Her fingers twitched like she wanted to run but couldn't decide where to go. When the officers separated everyone, one stayed with her while the other asked questions. I could see Sabrina's lips moving. She was talking fast, denying, inventing, spinning stories so quickly they tangled in the air. "It was an accident," she said. "The child startled me. She made me drop it." The officer didn't respond. He was watching her, calm and expressionless, letting her words bury themselves. Another officer asked Aaron if there was any history of conflict. "She's my sister," he said quietly. "She's been struggling, but nothing like this." Vanessa clung to the back of a chair, her face drained of color. She kept whispering, "She didn't mean it, she didn't mean it," over and over, as if saying it enough times would make it true. My parents stayed beside me, my mother's arm around my shoulders while my father gave the officers details. How the attack happened, how the lamp had been lifted with full force, how everyone had seen it. Their voices sounded far away, as if I were listening from underwater. When the ambulance siren faded, one of the officers turned to Aaron. "We'll need to check her belongings," he said, nodding toward Sabrina. She immediately stiffened, clutching her purse close to her body. "No," she snapped. "You can't just... This is ridiculous." The officer remained calm. "Ma'am, we're investigating an assault that took place here. If there's nothing to hide, this will be over quickly." Her knuckles whitened around the handle, and for a moment, I saw it, the same flicker of fear that had flashed across her face when Emma spoke up. "Fine," she muttered, tossing the bag onto the couch. The officers began to search the room while another opened her purse. I watched her eyes dart toward the hallway, calculating something. And then, as everyone's attention turned, she moved, quietly, quickly, slipping her bag out of sight under the console table behind her. "That's everything," she said, voice steady now, pretending nothing was missing. The search continued. The officers checked the side tables, the corners of the couch, the hallway closet. For a while, it looked like she might actually get away with it. My breath came shallow and fast. I could see her starting to believe her own performance. Then one of the officers noticed the edge of the purse strap peeking out from beneath the table. "What's this?" he asked, pulling it free. Sabrina froze. "That's not... Wait, I was going to..." Her words fell apart as the zipper opened and the flash of gold caught the light. The Rolex watch lay there, untouched, shining like the truth itself. No one spoke for several seconds. Aaron's jaw tightened, and Vanessa let out a small cry, half gasp, half disbelief. "You stole from your own brother?" he said softly. "And you hurt his child to hide it?" Sabrina's face crumpled, tears spilling. Not of guilt, but humiliation. "It wasn't supposed to go like this," she whispered. "I just needed money." But the officers had heard enough. They cuffed her gently, reading her rights as she sobbed and pleaded for someone to stop them. Vanessa stepped forward, her voice breaking. "Please, she's my daughter, she didn't mean to," but no one answered. As they led Sabrina out, the sound of the front door closing echoed through the quiet house. The party was gone. All that remained was broken glass, deflated balloons, and a stain on the carpet where my little girl had fallen. I sank to the floor, holding the edge of the couch, my vision blurring. Aaron knelt beside me, wrapping his arms around my shoulders. "It's over," he whispered, though neither of us believed it yet. Outside, I could see the flashing red and blue lights fade down the street as the police car turned the corner. For a long time, no one spoke. The house that had once felt full of family now felt like a stranger's home, cold, unfamiliar, waiting for something to start again. The hospital rooms smelled faintly of disinfectant and lavender soap, the kind nurses used to soften the sharpness of the air. Machines beeped steadily beside Emma's bed, and a soft blanket covered her tiny frame. I sat in the chair beside her, still wearing the same clothes from the baby shower, dried blood staining the sleeves. My fingers trembled as I brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. The doctor had said the wound wasn't life-threatening, but the words didn't ease the ache in my chest. Watching my child lie there, pale and silent, felt like punishment for a sin I didn't even know I'd committed. Aaron stood near the door, his hands in his hair, pacing. His shirt was wrinkled, and his eyes were hollow, but he still tried to sound strong when he spoke. "The police are still at the house," he said. "They're searching every room, just to be sure nothing else is missing." He paused, his voice lowering. "They said they found the watch." My breath caught. "Where?" I whispered. "Hidden under the console table in the living room. She must have shoved it there before they arrived." A wave of nausea rolled through me. So it was true. Sabrina had tried to hide it even after hurting my daughter. My hands gripped the edge of the chair, my knuckles white. "They're taking her into custody tonight," Aaron continued, his tone quieter now. "They'll book her for theft and assault." The officers said the witnesses' statements were enough to make the case solid. I nodded, staring at the 4-line in Emma's arm, the slow drip of clear fluid. "She's awake sometimes," I said softly. "She opens her eyes, but she gets scared when she sees how many people are around. I keep telling her she's safe." My voice cracked, and Aaron came closer, kneeling beside me. "You did everything right," he whispered. "You protected her. You called for help. That's what matters." I wanted to believe him, but guilt clawed at my stomach. I kept thinking about the moment before it happened, the way I'd smiled at Sabrina, trying to keep peace, pretending we were still family. A nurse entered quietly to check on Emma's vitals, adjusting the monitor with practiced calm. "She's a brave little girl," she said kindly. "She'll heal well. The doctor just wants to keep her overnight for observation." She gave me a small smile before slipping out, leaving us in the dim light of the room. The rhythmic hum of the machines became the only sound between us. Hours passed before Vanessa arrived. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen her hair disheveled, her voice shaky. She stood at the door for a long time before speaking. "How is she?" she asked quietly. Aaron didn't answer. His silence said everything. I finally said, "She'll recover. The doctors are hopeful." Vanessa nodded, eyes glistening. "I came straight from the station," she murmured. They took her. My daughter." Her voice cracked on the last word, and she pressed a trembling hand to her chest. "I don't know what to say," she continued. "I thought she was angry, but I didn't think." She stopped, choking on her words. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Because as much as she was grieving for one child, I was sitting beside the other, who'd been the one bleeding. Aaron turned toward her, his expression firm but tired. "You defended her even after she hit my daughter," he said quietly. "You called Emma a liar." Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. "I know," she whispered. I know, and I'll never forgive myself for it. I couldn't believe she'd do something so cruel. Believe it, Aaron said flatly. She stole, she lied, and when she got caught, she nearly killed a child. Vanessa sank into a chair, her shoulders shaking.
I didn't know what to say.
Part of me wanted to comfort her. Another part wanted to remind her that her blind loyalty had nearly destroyed us. The room fell silent again, broken only by the sound of Emma stirring in her sleep. Later that night, an officer arrived at the hospital to take our formal statements. He was gentle, professional, and apologetic. We've recovered the evidence, he told us. The watch matches the serial number from your husband's receipt. Several guests witnessed the assault, and their statements align with yours. He paused before adding, she's been charged with theft, child endangerment, and aggravated assault. The words sounded like they belonged to someone else's story. After he left, I stepped outside the room for some air. The corridor lights glowed dimly, and the vending machine hummed quietly near the wall. I stood by the window, staring at the Denver skyline, a sprawl of twinkling lights against the dark horizon. I pressed my hand against my stomach, feeling the faint kick beneath my palm. The baby was still strong, still moving, reminding me that life doesn't stop even when your heart breaks. When I returned to the room, Aaron had fallen asleep in the chair beside Emma's bed, his head resting on his arms. I sat beside him, watching them both, the two people who made everything worth surviving. I whispered softly to myself, a promise I didn't plan but meant with every breath. No one will ever hurt her again. Not while I'm still breathing. In the morning, Emma finally opened her eyes fully. Her voice was faint, but steady. Mommy, she said. I leaned forward quickly, my heart pounding. I'm right here, sweetheart. She blinked, confused, then whispered, Is the bad lady gone? I nodded, forcing a smile through tears. Yes, baby. She's gone. Emma reached out, her small fingers curling around mine. Good, she murmured, before drifting back into sleep. I sat there holding her hand, realizing that the worst night of my life had given me the clearest truth. Some people break families, but others, like my daughter, shine so brightly that no lie can hide them forever. By the time the court hearings began, 2 months had passed since that terrible day, and I was 8 months pregnant, slow, heavy, but still determined to see justice carried through. I couldn't attend the sessions in person because my doctor had ordered strict bed rest, so Aaron went in my place, sending me updates from the courthouse in Denver. Every morning before he left, he'd kiss my forehead and whisper, This is almost over. Just hold on a little longer. I'd nod, even though my heart still clenched every time I thought of Emma's frightened face and the weight of that lamp crashing down. The case had drawn quiet attention in the local community, not sensationalized, just quietly discussed, whispered about. A family torn apart by greed and jealousy. Sabrina sat at the center of it all, her once polished image crumbling under the harsh light of the courtroom. Aaron told me she looked smaller, defeated, her hair tied back, eyes sunken, no trace of the arrogance that used to fill every room she entered. He said she cried when the witnesses began to speak, the neighbors, our friends, even my parents. They described what they saw that afternoon, the chaos, the blood, the fear. The prosecutor painted a clear picture, a woman consumed by envy, stealing from her brother, and lashing out when her lies collapsed. The defense tried to argue that it had been an accident, that she never meant to harm the child, but the evidence said otherwise. The bruised skull, the broken lamp, the hidden watch found exactly where she'd tried to bury her guilt. When Aaron took the stand, he kept his composure, though later he told me it was the hardest thing he'd ever done. She's my sister, he said to the court, his voice low but steady. But she hurt my child, and no amount of blood relation can excuse that. Vanessa was there too, sitting behind him, her face streaked with tears. She had refused to testify, but she stayed through every minute, hands twisting in her lap, eyes fixed on the floor. She didn't defend her daughter this time. She just listened, her silence finally admitting what her pride couldn't. When the final verdict came, it was quiet, almost anticlimactic, guilty on all counts: assault, theft, and child endangerment. The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes and a steady tone, addressed Sabrina directly. "Your choices were deliberate," she said. "And though regret may come now, the harm you caused will echo long after you serve your time. 3 years in state prison. No parole for the first 18 months. The sound of the gavel fell like the closing of a chapter we'd all been trapped in. Erin texted me the moment it was over. "It's done. She's going away." I stared at those words on my phone for a long time, unsure whether to feel relief or grief. Justice didn't feel like victory. It felt like breathing after nearly drowning. When Erin came home that night, his exhaustion showed in every movement. He set down his jacket, sat beside me on the couch, and wrapped his arms around me carefully, as if afraid I might break. "It's finished," he whispered again. "The judge was fair. The truth won." I nodded, leaning my head on his shoulder. Emma was already asleep upstairs, her head full of brighter things now: paintings, bedtime stories, plans for her baby brother's arrival. The nightmare was slowly fading into something survivable. A few days later, Vanessa came to the house. She looked older, her posture slightly bent, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. She asked to see Emma. When my daughter appeared at the top of the stairs, Vanessa began to cry. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "For everything. For not believing you. For not stopping her." Emma didn't say anything. She just nodded politely and walked back upstairs. I didn't stop her. Some wounds need silence more than words. Before leaving, Vanessa turned to me and said, "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just want you to know. I see it now. I see how wrong I was." Her words were shaky but real, and for the first time, I believed her. I didn't promise her anything, but I thanked her for coming. As the door closed behind her, I felt a strange peace settle over the house. Not happiness, but the quiet beginning of it. That night, lying in bed with Erin's arm draped around me, I felt the baby shift inside me, strong and sure. For the first time in months, I didn't dream about the lamp, or the scream, or the flashing red lights. I dreamed of light, soft, warm, unbroken. The kind that only comes after a storm finally passes. 2 months later, the morning began the same way it always did, with soft light spilling through the curtains, the faint smell of coffee drifting from the kitchen, and my daughter's gentle footsteps padding down the hall. But something was different this time. I was 9 months pregnant, and every movement felt heavy, slow, yet filled with a kind of anticipation I hadn't felt in so long. The trial, the chaos, the endless nights of fear, they were all behind us now. The house had changed too. The broken lamp was gone, the stain on the carpet replaced, and laughter had found its way back into these rooms. Still, a small ache lingered, the kind that doesn't fade overnight but softens with time. That morning, Erin helped me into the car for a routine checkup, his hand steady on my back. "You're glowing," he said with a tired smile. "Maybe today's the day." I rolled my eyes, laughing softly. "You've said that every day this week." He grinned. "Well, one of these days I'll be right." At the hospital, the nurses greeted us with familiar warmth. They remembered us from before, from the night Emma had been admitted. They smiled when they saw her now, healthy and bright, holding a stuffed bunny close to her chest. "You've grown so much, sweetheart," one nurse said. Emma nodded proudly. "I'm going to be a big sister today." By afternoon, the contractions came, slow at first, then stronger. The world blurred into fragments, Erin's hand gripping mine, the nurse's calm voice counting breaths, the doctor saying, "You're doing great, Elena, almost there." I remember crying, not from pain, but from the flood of emotions that came rushing back. The fear of loss, the relief of survival, the hope that maybe, finally, we were moving toward something good again. When I heard the first cry, it felt like a door opening. Erin kissed my forehead, tears glistening in his eyes. "It's a boy," he whispered. "He's perfect." They placed the tiny bundle in my arms, and I looked down at his wrinkled face, his small fingers curling around mine. My heart swelled so full it almost hurt. "Welcome home, little one," I murmured. Emma climbed onto the chair beside me, staring in awe. "He's so small," she whispered. "But he's strong," I told her. "Just like you." When we came home 2 days later, the house felt warm again. My parents were waiting at the door with flowers and balloons, tears in their eyes. Even Vanessa came, not uninvited, but hesitant, carrying a small gift bag. She looked fragile, remorse written all over her face. "I didn't want to intrude," she said quietly. "I just wanted to see the baby." Erin nodded, letting her step inside. She walked slowly to the crib, looking down at the sleeping newborn, and her lips trembled. "He's beautiful," she whispered. "Thank you for letting me be here." I didn't know what to say, so I simply nodded. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was something close to grace. That evening, our living room glowed again, friends dropping by with casseroles, laughter echoing against the walls, the hum of new life replacing old pain. A brand new lamp sat on the same side table where the tragedy had begun, its soft light spreading across the room. I caught myself staring at it for a long moment, remembering everything that had happened beneath its shadow. Then Emma tugged at my sleeve. "Mom, can we turn the lamp on for the baby?" she asked. I smiled. "Yes, sweetheart. Let's give him some light." As the bulb flickered to life, the room filled with warmth, a quiet, gentle brightness that touched every corner. I looked around at my family, Aaron with the baby in his arms, Emma leaning against me, my parents laughing softly, and even Vanessa sitting silently, watching the scene with watery eyes. For the first time in months, I felt peace. Real peace. The kind that comes when you've walked through fire and realized you're still standing. I thought of all that had been lost, trust, innocence, the illusion of safety, but also of what had been found. Truth, courage, and the unbreakable bond between a mother and her child. I took a deep breath, letting the glow wash over me, and whispered to myself, "Some lights break forever, but the light of truth never dies." Thank you for listening to this story until the end. If it touched your heart or kept you guessing, make sure to hit the like button and share your thoughts in the comments below. I love reading what you think. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next story that might change the way you see family, love, and truth.